Hello, and thank you for choosing to listen to the Kuorain audio files. This is a voice recording of all the RP I did in the Disruptor 2 campaign. Hope you enjoy it. 2200, the will of the device's holiness, choosing a direction. Oh, the great device. We require holy wisdom in this time of worry and great possibility. Would you please be so kind as to tell us in which direction our future expansion should be focused? The device's ancient corners start to glow as it begins speaking.
I don't know, bruh, but I think the right side is better than the others, you know?
Order in the Hall of Parliament. We are gathered here on this very day to interpret what the great, holy, and magnificent device told us. A fierce debate fires up, lasting hours upon hours, but eventually a resolution appears victorious by the device's choice. The POU have managed to put together the most comprehensive argument. So of course, as we all know, the device is all-knowing and thus its word is absolute. We should thus always explore the right. 2203. The depths of a larger galaxy. As we all know, we have gathered the Parliament here today to discuss how and what purpose the seemingly habitable world in the Obrium system should hold. The device has been consulted and has answered as follows.
About the green and barley, what I call a continental right? I think it would hit diff if you just use the cook, you know?
To cook? Obviously that means that we should use it to cook food. I don't know what else there is to discuss here, yells out a disgruntled member of the POU.
I don't believe so. The device, in its eternal wisdom, of course, tells us it's will in poetry, and in this case, to cook means to boil chemicals and do science,
Responds equally disgruntled member of the LPU.
No, the device has dealt its hand and told us to cook. We've deciphered this ancient code and come to the conclusion that it means that we should make the planet produce a good variety of everything we need.
Answers an enthusiastic PNI member. The debate, as always, doesn't return much of anything useful, but it is decided that this issue falls under the Growth Ministry's jurisdiction. The PNI currently hold that seat and thus can shape the planet as they see fit. 2206. We are not alone? Reports from our foul scouts have picked up strange signals of ships that are very much not like ours near a black hole towards the north. We do not yet know if it's some Kuorain rogue agents or an alien species, but we are keen on finding out. In other news, our colony in the Obrium system seems to be ready for inhabitants. The colonists have, with their approval of Parliament, named the colony Oravankangas. The planet seems to be in great shape and has a ton of animals, minerals, and living plants to harvest. After the speaker stops talking, the device's lights flicker for a bit before it starts to speak.
That's great fire, bruh. I hope your homies start cooking with planets just like I told y'all. And those shiploads you found near the Black Hurlington. Yeah, I think it'd be very Sigma if you guys would, find out who they were.
2208. A navy worthy of the device. Just 8 years ago, we left our solar system to explore the great depths of space. What did we find there? Place to live on, resources to harvest, and alien life forms. But also hostile entities that attacked our exploration vessels on sight. We remember the clues we have lost, the horrific and deadly creatures that lurk in space. But no more, we just stand by and let this happen. A large rumbling noise starts behind the speaker's podium as a spaceship with weapons launches from behind him. The ship itself, while not large, nor that heavily armed, is still a monumental achievement and a step closer to proper space exploration. Our navy is going to be the newest branch in our great military, and that very ship that launched from behind me is going to be our very first armament. May I present the Cardano-class corvette ship of the Holy Kuorain Council of the Great Device Pyöveli to a new age of protected exploration. 2212. Contact with strange beings from the north. Ship sightings had been made all around the Kuorain space, but every time the ships eluded communications, until one of the ships parked near the Aurinko space station. The ship opened communications and revealed that the ships belonged to a nation called the Consortium of Masks. This nation seemingly resides to the north of the Hell's Law system. Negotiations were left quite empty-handed as the device deemed the other side's diplomats as untrustworthy and decided to keep communications light. The only major pact made at these negotiations was that the Hell's Small system would stay as a neutral border system. 2215. Mammals from the northeast. We were completely surprised to get a completely unprompted communication from beyond the Scarlet Unity on the masks. Our first messages were very friendly. They also seem to have some sort of knowledge on you. We assume one of the other two nations spread this information. After immediate first contact, some meeting was set up. They came here to Kandahar and a diplomatic visit. The ship landed on a species of mammalian aliens bearing antiquated titles. They seemed quite confident in their resistance to our planet's hostile environment, being quite light protective gear. The rest of the visit was held at the Hall of Parliament. There was a light confrontation. They seemed to doubt your ability to lead. After a couple rounds of arguments, the representatives suddenly found that there might be a hidden agenda, but we shall see. The meeting basically ended with the other side agreeing to open cordial diplomatic channels. 2217. Contact with the monarchy to the west normalized. As you know, a few years ago, the monarchy to the west that claimed to have destroyed one of our exploration vessels contacted soon after the fact. This conversation was quite hostile from their side. They seem to have regarded us as lesser beings and claimed that their borders are closed to outsiders. Our conversation was quite short on that day, but we did come to an agreement about us opening an embassy on their capital. This has been completed this week, and the first batch of diplomats will be sent there reside in this embassy. Communications with the West will be left neutral. They seem to be on way too high of themselves to be a threat. 2219. Big Corpo. From the east, a box followed into the range of one of our border station's radars. Inside the box was a gem and a message of sorts. We answered the message carefully, finding out that the people on the other side were a nation comprised of a bunch of corporate entities. A meeting on Kantahammer was organized. The visit went well, outside of one incident. Their entourage's main envoy seemingly completely blacked out with no explanation. After that, a delegation was sent to their homeworld, a very mountainous world housing two alien races. The visit went without much incident, though they did tell us of a possible threat from somewhere beyond their borders. As well as that, a deal was struck of corporate base on our frontier colonies. 2220. Election season. It is once again election time in the Holy Kuorain Council of the Great Device. People reach their closest polling station in order to vote for their favorite candidate representing a party, or even no party. Debates have been held between major parties, with no real consistent agreement reached in any of them. The results are in. Following up on their 2200 success, first place with the most seats is the POU, securing a full 36 seats. In second place we once again have the LPU with 29 seats. Following up our usual big players, the PPI have managed to absolutely soar in their results this year, managing a massive 24 seats. Losing their advantages now fourth place PNI, dropping a massive 19 seats down to just 8. And rounding out our results we have the independent candidates. 3 of them managed to get in this season. And this concludes our electoral coverage for today. Glory to the device. 2209. Once a plenty. Loading. Report. Loading. Complete. Wow. The day has been rough. I can't even imagine if that would happen if. Earlier today, reports started coming in from the city of Koval that seismic activity in the area had suddenly spiked. Nobody really cared. This hellhole of a planet has always been like that. But man, nobody could guess that this would happen. Nobody knew this could happen. Right next to Koval is one of the largest mountains of the planet, though, as we now know, it's not just a mountain. It is in fact a volcano. And today was the day it happened to burst. Most volcanic activity on this planet has been quite tame, but this? The exact opposite. I don't yet know the full death toll, but nobody had a warning of this. The city was right next to the volcano in a very enclosed valley. Hopes are not that high. Recording. Skipping forward. After action report. Death toll 1 million to 3 million. Location. Kymenlaaksis province. City of Koval. The city is gone. Most of the material that came out of the volcano poured straight down the valley at immense pace. On the other side of the valley there was a dam. Not a major one, but still quite large. It got hit by debris of some kind. Wiped down most of the people trying to escape. May the device help us in these trying times. Report over. Shutting down. 2238. The elixir of life. The Xranex system was a strange place. Our science vessels first jumped into the system decades ago. In the system was a strange tree-like structure. Our ships closed in to investigate, but the tree seemingly summoned a horde of spacefaring creatures. We couldn't do much about it at the time, but now we could. Our ships jumped in, quickly neutralized the threat, and our scientists could move in again. I don't personally know much about the tree itself, but it seemed to produce some sort of sap. It wasn't instantly apparent what it did, but eventually we discovered that it cures most diseases we've found. Now, I ask you, oh great device, what should we do with this sap?
Yo, you guys cooked with this one. Like, I don't know, bruh, but you know that I rate the fact that you all are able to be this bussin'. Now, use this thingy for like curing people's canceronies and shit like that, you know? I don't know what illnesses you get really, but you get my point.
And so it was. The sap would be administered as an emergency medicine. This was chosen due to the relatively minimum amount that it produced. It is yet unknown how much this impacts life expectancy in the Kuorain lands, but we will keep track. 2240. Change on the horizon. It is election season once again. Trillions of Kuorain rush to the ballot to vote for the party representing their interest the best. Debates have actually made ground with the PNI rising in popularity among the users of Twitter and Reddit. Good luck to everyone involved. And the results have just come in. We are going to be going through the results starting from the largest party of last term and ending with the smallest. Absolutely plummeting since the last election of the POU losing a whopping 21 seats. The device wasn't solely the result of the people this time, eh? The rivals in the LP instead have only managed to lose 5 seats, keeping their spot as the second largest party. The PPI seem to have lost momentum as they have lost 9 seats, almost undoing what they gained a couple of decades ago. Now, getting into our dark horse, the PNI have exploded in votes, rising from 8 seats all the way to 38. That is 30 seats of increase. I wonder what they'll do with this new seat of power. Last and least are the independent candidates. 8 of them have managed to get through the elections now. It's 5 more than last time. That is it for the 2024 election coverage. Have a wonderful week.
Sinun matkasi on ollut pitkä, ystäväseni. Lepää, muuten et jaksa jatkaa sitä.
I, who, no, what are you?
Minut sinä olet tuntenut mielessäsi vuosikymmeniä, mutta et sitä vielä tajunnut työntäessäsi ääniä pois. Nyt sinun on aika hyväksyä minut. Tarvitsen apuasi.
You need my help?
Kyllä, minä tarvitsen. Sinulla ei ole jäljellä paljon aikaa tässä maailmassa. Annan sinulle tilaisuuden. Annan sinulle voimaa.
I understand.
Hyvä lapseni, nouse. Sinulla on pyhä tarkoitus ja päättymätön tie edessäsi.
2258. The failures of many.
Saatanan pöljästit! On 4 valtion ylivoima ja silti häveät jollekin saatanan skipidihliasulle avaruudelle. Siis vittu, ei ne edes osaa pyytää apua, kun Loira olisin kernaastikin auttanut, mut kun nämä mulkvistit ei edes kysy muuta kuin ruokaa. Saatana köyhät paskat. Seuraava kerran kun näyttävät saatana rotta naamassa saavat läksiä ilman mitään ruokia. Vittu. Ja jos ne vittu pyytää suojelusta, niin saavat maksaa. Ilmanen mahdollisuus on ennen jo.
Noise of objects being flung around and thrown at walls were heard from inside the device's chamber. Nobody dared enter for weeks. 2261. A bestowal of sinew. The door to the hall of the device opens. In walks a Kuorain, alone, tattered and bruised, carrying something. Something not seen by the common eye in millennia.
Mahtavaa, suorastaan erinomaista. Sinä suoritit tehtäväsi. Varmistatko, että kukaan ei seurannut sinua?
No. Nobody followed me. Nobody saw me. Nobody recognized me.
Minun on pakko kehua suoritustasi. En ole ikinä pystynyt luottamaan kenenkään muuhun näin tärkeän asian kanssa. Etenkään, jos olisin sen vielä tehtyä. Ansaitset palkkion. Tehtäväsi on valmis, mutta työsi on vasta alkamassa.
A reward?
Kyllä, palkkio. Kumartuisitko hetkeksi? Kiitos. Oi, pyhä lanka universumin, pitkä kuin olet, mahtava voimiltasi ja tuhoutumaton olemukseltasi. Palkitse tämä hohtava yksilö, valjasta hänen voimansa.
The room begins to glow in a shade of purple, hard to observe with the naked eye. A humming noise fills the air and the Kuorain is lifted into the air. His eyes split wide open and he is dropped right back onto the ground.
Nouse, Tapio. Tuon puolen voimat ovat valinneet sinut jakamaan heidän pyhää sanomansa. Kun lähdet täältä, suuntaa pohjoiseen. Sieltä löydät mitä etsit.
I understand. Kiitos. 2266. The magnanimous device. The Spriggans lost their war quite badly. During this war they came out seeking aid. This aid was given in form of food, though seemingly was not enough. They now come to us asking for aid in future conflicts. The device declared that the helping of the Spriggans in exchange for nothing wasn't in anyone's interest. A deal was signed detailing that the Spriggans would pay 5,000 units of minerals, 2,000 units of consumer goods, and 5% of their current energy production in exchange for protection against the eastern menaces. 2267. The poor huddled masses. It was a calm day on the colonial Suopera. The sun was shining and the people were working as normal. This didn't change even when an armada of ships appeared on the edge of the system. Maybe it was just an army coming in for training. Suopera administrative station would contact this fleet. A while passed before an answer came. Apparently these ships carried the refugees from people in the western end of the galaxy. These refugees were allowed to land on Suopera. The planet's governor would meet them and discuss what to do. It wasn't exactly discovered who the refugees were running from, or why, but for the time being they were allowed to stay. Only if they stayed clear of any Kuorain settlements. It quickly became apparent though that these refugees would become a problem. Apparently, Suopera, and by the extension of that, the rest of the Kuorain colonies, were unsuited for habitation from the species. On top of this annoying factoid, they also seemingly weren't able to digest common Kuorain foods that well. Housing these refugees was quickly proving expensive, and the planet's governor would frantically trying to find ways to get rid of them. No real useful ways were found, and it was eventually deemed that they just have to bite the bullet and care for the refugees until some way to get rid of them would pop up. 2270. Us? A ship contacted us from Spriggan space, though notably they were not of Spriggan origin. Once channels were opened, a couple of Kuorain showed up, representing a confederation. They seemed to dodge most questions about their state, but they did tell us that they had a multitude of different species living in the Empire. They told us a bunch about the nations surrounding them, though. Most of them seemed quite unfriendly. We might have to watch out. Once mentioned, they seemed quite eager to set up a way for the refugees we are housing to emigrate to their lands. How well this happens is well to be seen. Our conversation ended with an agreement of embassies. We hope to learn something about them. 2274. A call into action. We were aware that signing the treaty with the Spriggans might have sent us down this path at some point, but when it did, we were not ready. The draconian entities crossed the Spriggan border and assaulted the border station. After this, the Spriggans quite quickly contacted us, and we had to mobilize at least 2 of our fleets, as we promised them. The fleets were organized into an expeditionary fleet and quickly sent towards the Spriggan capital system in hopes that they weren't too late. Upon our arrival near the Spriggan capital, the opposing fleet was spotted. A formidable foe, too powerful for just the expeditionary fleet, and only was given to be on standby, orbiting a nearby defensive station, hoping that if the opposing forces attacked, the station would be powerful enough to supplement the power difference. The dragons seemed to have noticed this strategy and kept their positions. This was good for us, as we were actually just waiting for reinforcements from the Volp. The Volp reinforcements arrived soon enough, and our plan was hatched to attack the opposing force together. It's not clear to me what exactly happened, but the Volp engaged the opposing fleet on their own, still coming out of it victorious though. This was good for us, as the fewer losses we sustained from this conflict, the better. The Draconians' fleets were destroyed, and no further action was in sight, so it was decided that the expeditionary force would end the occupation of the remaining Spriggan systems to the south. This was achieved, but what the fleet didn't know was that there was another war brewing to the east. 2275. The beginnings of a greater power. It's been 14 years, 7 months, 3 weeks, 6 days, 5 hours, 57 minutes, and 18 seconds since the great device bestowed upon me these powers. After the device told me to come here, I felt different. I felt like I hadn't lived before that day. The powers, unimaginable the most, have made my life strange. Days felt like weeks, and hours felt like days. Life moves slowly, but I don't feel bored. Quite the opposite. Every second I spend feels more fulfilling than the last. This place, when I arrived, was long abandoned, and ravaged by a force now gone. All that was remaining was a pile of bricks from a bygone era left standing in a pattern resembling a temple. I made my home there. I discovered what I could do. This, of course, was a lot. The device had blessed me with powers of its kind. I could talk with others straight in their head, read their thoughts, influence them, and move objects with my mind. This, though, required a whole lot more time to learn. I'm yet to even master it after all these years. Some 5 years ago, I was ready to start teaching the skills and responsibilities that a yielder of such power has. After my students possessed a mental fortitude and personality to wield these powers, I communed with the great device, who then decided if my student was worthy of their powers being unleashed. As of current, some 40 people have passed this test, and the number grows ever farther. I've gathered a council to help me train future recruits, but I have already lived to my purpose. My powers and I can only thank the great device for this. Oi pyhä kuutio, anna minulle voimia jatkaa, anna minulle aikaa voittaa, anna minulle pyhät voimasi, pyhitä päiväni ja paranna taitojani. Kiitän sinua anteliaisuudestasi, mahtavuudestasi ja voimistasi, joita meille suot. 2278. A lesser foe. 1, 2. A fall of thine foe. 3, 4. A rise of an ally. 5, 6. The device wishes. We weren't even probably done with beating up the dragons when news came from upper leadership that a more dire situation had developed to our north. The enemy that the brigands had described had crossed their boundaries and sounded the drums of war. So we turned our ships around and headed back north towards warp-guarded space so that we'd meet up with their fleets. We could have probably taken on the invaders on our own, but linking up with the Volp would minimize our losses. Miksi kuolla rottien takia? Once our ships reached the rendezvous point with the Volp, an idea, an understandable one at that, started spreading through the fleet. Why die for some rats? Whispers spread like wildfire, reaching every crevice, every shadow, every auxiliary vessel. A fire, first metaphorical, was lit. There were no disputes, no reasoning. It was believed this would blow over. Just a quirk of some inherent fools. They couldn't have been more wrong. Kun hengen järki loppuu, alkaa se rellakoida. A fire, no longer metaphorical, was set. A ship on the edge of the fleet was set aflame from the inside by a particularly extreme crew member. It spread quicker than the ship's crew could ever anticipate. The ship exploded in a green ball, sending debris through the slightly packed fleet, causing massive damage to nearby ships, leaving a good chunk of the already limited task force demobilized near enemy territory. It was madness. Madness that could not be afforded. The device was contacted. Tuli sammuu, kun sen hapen typehdyttää. You're gonna come over here to tell me that this skirty, blue-tailed anti-demure fellas dare question my Sigma orders and think that they're radical-pilled rebellion maxing. End this quickly. Get replacements as soon as possible.
Airlock manual opening sequence activated. Please stand by.
A message that was heard all throughout the fleet. The commanding staff of each ship had gotten orders to lock themselves into the ship's command deck. They would be spared. The airlocks opened. The cold, dark, airless reach of space made its slimy way throughout the fleet, sucking up everything not bolted down to the floor with it.
Casualty estimates complete. Submitting data. Death count 157,000. Estimated material cost 10,000 units of energy. Effective ship losses 5.
After the replacement crews arrived, the war itself went on quite easily. Another nation's fleet joined us, saved us some losses at least. The opposing fleets weren't that strong, we defended them quite easily without any real losses. After we defeated their fleets, we went to the opposing forces' northern sector. We occupied one of their colonies in the north. This occupation would be quite brief, as we found nothing of use, except a bit of interesting technology. After receiving confirmation from the brigand officials of the defeat of the opposing forces, our fleet returned home, weary and haunted by the souls of those consumed by the wrath of outer space. 2281. The decaying of a means to an end. Matti had been called to the device chamber on a mostly calm day. The election season had gone well for his party, the POU, and he was feeling up. He had no ideas on why the device had called him there, but he was eager to find out. Even the follower of the device's glory he was. The device seemed more lively today, more chaotic. Its various parts moved around sporadically. Its colors changed at a pace enough to make someone faint. Beautiful is what some, including Matti himself, would describe this irregular flurry as. The device hadn't communicated a thing to Matti after he had stepped foot into the chamber. A most abnormal event. He disregarded it. The device is surely just calculating the infinite cosmos, he told himself. Suddenly, the movement and flickering lights came to a halt. Matti would subsequently feel a familiar presence in his mind.
Joo, sä pääsit paikalle, mahtista veli hyvä. Se kyllä tiedät, että tuo teidän parlamentin jänttynä on vähän skivitimaskea. Vois kyllä niinku olla teidän hallus kokonaan se. Eiks oiskin kiva, jos minä auttaisin teitä saamaan koko jutska hallintaanne?
The device spoke a tongue Matti had never heard. It bared a resemblance to Kuorain, but still, it wasn't anywhere near what he'd heard before. But further than that, he somehow understood every word. The words themselves made sense, of course. He was right. The rest of the parliamentary parties were stupid. His party was the only correct one.
Mahtavaa, silkasta mahtavaa. Ymmärrät täysin tehtäväsi.
Nouse lapsukäiseni, lampaani, nosta sielusi eteeni, ja luovuta itsesi minulle. Yes, my lord. Nothing happened in the physical sense, but inside Matti, a new purpose was awakened. This new purpose he would spread into the rest of his party. The system is antiquated and must be eliminated. 2285. This is how liberty dies, with thunderous applause. 4 years have passed since Matti's and the device's meeting. Matti has spent every hour, every minute since then planning this very moment, the device's magnum opus. Not only has Matti gathered up his own party for this grand plan, he has convinced individual representatives from the other major parties to go along with his grand machinations. It was the eve of a normal afternoon. A parliamentary meeting had been called upon by Matti, and everyone arrived as normal, except something was off. Matti and most of the POU were not present. Chatter filled the air. This was incredibly confusing. The POU are usually the first people present in the hall. They will not have to wander along, as all of a sudden, out of the hall's doors went into lockdown mode, and a giant screen descended down from the hall's ceiling. The screen would light up, and Matti's figure would appear.
The device has had enough of this pointless parliamentary system, and well, that includes you all. This bureaucratic system stands not one use, and we're all better off under the direct control of the device, whose strong metaphorical iron grip shall extend the state of being. The hall is going to explode in, about 15 seconds. And you are going to be blamed for it. Hyvästi.
Emergency broadcast alert! Emergency broadcast alert!
This is the Kanta-Häme uutiskanal. An emergency broadcast has been called throughout the nation as the parliamentary building suffered an attack barely 10 minutes ago. It's not yet known who the culprit was or what the casualty numbers are, but we will keep you updated. Save us, oh great device. It has been 30 minutes since the attack, and we have now gotten a hold of the POU's now chairman Matti. He commented to us that the surveillance footage of the parliamentary hall showed that the other parties were having a massive fight in the hall, and someone set off a bomb. This is our best lead as of now. We will continue to update you on these striking events. 1 hour has passed, and Matti has passed us the news that the great device will be making its first ever public appearance. In just 2 hours, to address the situation, our political analysts will keep you updated on how this will likely impact the nation's politics. 2285. It's a box. All throughout the galaxy, a broadcast was picked up from the capital regions of the Holy Kuorain Council of the Great Device. For the first 10 minutes, it repeatedly described that an important message would be delivered by the device soon, and to keep the channel open. After the 10 minutes was done, the broadcast would change from pure audio into a visual stream, presumably from Kanta-Häme. No apparent speaker had appeared just yet. All that was to be seen was a massive towering building flanked by smaller towers, all purely grey. In the background, mountains lay dormant, sprouting a full grey outlook, smoother than one would expect. The sky glows of a faint green, and a light source can be seen far, far away, presumably a star. And whatever was streaming the broadcast would zoom in on a platform on the massive tower. The doors to the platform would open and a Kuorain would walk out. Inhabitants of the Holy Kuorain Council of the Grand Device and the Galaxy, we have brought you to listen to the device's great wisdom in its first ever public appearance ever. The device will shed some light on the recent bombing of our dear Parliament, then announce something nobody has ever heard before. Now, may I present to you the great device. The doors to the platform would open up once again. An array of different colors of light radiate from the open door, and a being floats onto the platform. To an uneducated being, it'd just be an inanimate object. But to a politically aware mind, this would be a turning point in northern galactic politics. The device's parts float around in a pandemonium, lights flickering from its inside like a wild space storm interacting with the nebula around it. A voice starts speaking, but unlike the Kuorain before, the voice is not coming from the broadcast, but sounds like someone is whispering straight into your ear.
Yo, you motherfucking fuckers. I'm out here today to make you up to know that I'll be real big cringe, not gonna lie. Like, not respecting me. And that's not coolio, cause I'm the Alpha Sigma of this galaxy boo. And you G's are just cuck-maxing beta-pilled beings who are the beloved mind-mogging. You get me? So yeah, oh yeah, about the Bombi Booze. Some funky wonky anti-demure opposition. Yuck! Memberoonies blew up my funny anti-skibbity parliament bullerini and they're just not buzzing.
So fandom tagged them, and I also decided that this whole parliamentary business is just a minus 10,000 aura. And my gap needs to fix this, no cap. So go back in the racing mode soon. My nation will be serving up with the name Holy Kuorain Imperium of the Great Device. So yeah, I'm not gonna yap no more. So bye bye. Soon after the device ends its speech, the broadcast ends. 2291. Space Infrastructure. We began the Space Speedway initiative some 15 years ago, and we have now concluded on its construction. The main road goes all the way from Kooltip in the very northwest of the Empire to Janlunkissa in the opposing direction, letting vessels traverse this vast space in under a year. The other notable routes include an end station in Pennosta that lets us easily access the Hellsmaw Independence Zone, and the end station in Astor that facilitates rapid deployments to Skylight Space if necessary. The project was concluded within the schedule and only ran a tiny bit above the budget of. We expect this project to increase the readiness of our Black Ocean Navy by about 50%. 2297. Real change. Since the device's first public appearance, things have changed. Not that fast, or noticeably, but they have changed. More military activity has been spotted around Kuorain space and some larger empty sectors of Kantahame, and it seems as if the parliament convened less often. All this culminated into an announcement by the device in the Hall of Parliament.
Yo, so feels like we ain't doing this no more. This skibbity ass parliament system is no more, Now, cause I'm very mindful, very demure, I can lead us, yeah? So I've made a fire-ass decision that this funky ass parliament will be dissolved and this buzzing building will be expanded into my ruling palace. This Harlington will stay as a museum piece, though it's kinda slay. Construction of the device's grand palace will start very soon after this announcement. The parliamentary building would be used as its base, but the final product would resemble the starting point quite little. 2307. Power and glory. My Essington hasn't done much.
I need more space, more people, more things to mog. Like the skibidi mass thingies up north. They are protected by those beta-ass foxes. My glazers are also protected by them, so that ain't nothing. I need to think max more about this. Oh, now I thought of an op. No cap. Yo! Petri, get your cat here. So I've been meaning to mog more people, yeah? So without yapping too much, I've thought maxed a bit and became smart pilled, and I'm starting to serve. So get this. There's this weak ass fucker straight to our west handling a mid ass queen or so. They straight up gooning over there, and I need to stop that and mog on them instead. So be a Chad and get on that. Preparations were started immediately after the order was given. Naval exercises would be started, and additional procurement of equipment would be budgeted. A recruitment drive would also begin, as naval ships are usually kept operating on skeleton crews during peacetime. 2312 to 2313. Salamasota. Just a couple of months earlier, the device sent the Venerians an ultimatum. It was light in its demands. It would let them keep their queen and their whole government. They would just be under our protection now. They rejected this deal, somehow thinking that the device was bluffing. Not long would pass and the device would call a peacekeeping operation in the Venerian space, citing an unreasonable amount of criminal acts by the Venerian ruler and their people. The first phase of the operation would be to clear out and capture the key strategic exclave to the Venerian north. If the space garrison would be wiped out, the Venerians could not capture it back. The Kuorain navy would thus cross the border from the core tip system. On the other side of the hyperlane would be the Ugrad system, spotting a starbase and a small garrisoning fleet. This garrison was very quickly destroyed, as it was quite limited in its numbers. The starbase fell very soon after. After this, the Fianita system, right to the south of the Ugrad system, would be seized. After this, the rest of the Venerian navy would be spotted in the Yildim system. The second phase would be the rush for the Venerian capital and the accursed beacon system. There seemed to be a starbase or two, and a small remainder of the Venerian navy. The Venerian navy managed to cross the border and captured the system of Uranikosg, cutting the hyperdelay just before the Kuorain navy was able to use it. The Venerian fleet was now trying to continue their advance, but they were cut short by the Kuorain navy during the system engaging in combat. The Venerians were outnumbered 3-1 and possessed less sophisticated weaponry and armory, sealing the navy's fate within just a few moments of battle. After wiping out the remaining fleet, our navies blitzed on towards the Venerian capital, taking out anything that foolishly resisted. Not long would pass before our fleet was floating right above Azan's crucible. It was briefly debated if the planet was to be invaded or bombarded. It was chosen that the planet would be bombarded until submission. A singular shot was fired, aimed directly at the defenseless palace. The shot itself didn't do much physical damage, but psychologically, the Venerian rulership was devastated, and a call to negotiate was received. The peacekeeping operation would be concluded within just a half a year. 2313. A loose treaty for an uneasy peace. A shot was fired, a tower ruined, a royalty shocked, a ruler vindicated, and thus a peace was signed. This treaty, mostly kept secret, and instantly upon signing by the Venerian monarch, was moved deep underground on Kantahame into an archive.
Treaty of Azan's Crucible.
Article 1. No longer shall the Venerian nation be called the Glorious Venerian Imperium. Section 1b. The name Venerian Imperium has been approved for use during the signing process. Article 2. If Kuorain leadership find the Venerian leadership responsible for committing acts against the interest of the Holy Kuorain Imperium of the Great Device, the aforementioned Kuorain leadership may dictate a suitable punishment on the Venerian leadership. Article 2, Section 2b. The Kuorain leadership deems what constitutes an act against Kuorain interests. Article 2, Section 2c. If leadership of the Holy Kuorain Imperium of the Great Device is compromised, Article 2 still applies in its entirety. Article 3. The Holy Kuorain Imperium of the Great Device is obligated to protect the Venerian Imperium if their continued existence is seen to have been compromised. Article 3, Section 3b. The Kuorain leadership is responsible for defining the state of the Venerian Imperium's continued existence. Article 4. The Venerian Imperium is to give up claims to the system of Ugrad and Fionita, and cede jurisdiction of the space to the Holy Kuorain Imperium of the Great Device. Article 5. The current ruler of the Venerian Imperium, Her Illustrious Excellency Serafina von Astraliven, Empress of the Glorious Venerian Imperium, Regent of Azan's Crucible, Guardian of Serafina's Venture, Defender of Her Majesty's Purview, Overseer of the Proper Rest, Lord Commander of Stars Dialogue, Warden of the Void, is allowed to keep her current role. Article 5, Section 5b. Kuorain leadership has free range to revoke any or all titles from the present leader of the Venerian Imperium. Signed, Matti, Head Diplomat of the Holy Kuorain Imperium of the Great Device. Her Illustrious Excellency Serafina von Astralvin, Empress of the Glorious Venerian Imperium, Regent of Azan's Crucible, Guardian of Serafina's Venture, Defender of Her Majesty's Purview, Overseer of the Proper Rest, Lord Commander of Stars Dialogue, Warden of the Void. 2317. The Garrison. It had been a while now since the peacekeeping operation in the Venerian Imperium had concluded, and in the time since, so much crime had been located that the legitimacy of the Venerian leadership had been called into question inside Kuorain leadership. Something had to be done. There was no way these criminals were continuing their operations without interference. The device pondered on about this issue for days, weighing all the different paths to deal with this issue. If it wasn't dealt with in the Venerian part of the Imperium, it could fully just spread to Kuorain lands. After a while, the device landed on one of the more drastic solutions, gathering up a military force to combat the criminals in a war of attrition. There was just no way these criminals could sustain operations with a full-on blockade on their activities, right? A force was gathered up, 50,000 strong, and equipped with weaponry and vehicles fit to raid a fortress. The first target would be Azan's Crucible, the capital of the Venerians, and presumably the hub of these criminal activities. Though this force's main job would be to fight the criminals, they would also replace some of the Venerian guards at key events and locations, just to remind the Venerians who they lost to. Only time will tell if this force is able to efficiently root out these cells of criminals. 2320. A positive visit. It had been a while since the Stellarians had been in contact with us. We didn't know how they'd react to our special operation in the Venerian Imperium. The device nonetheless wanted to meet the Stellarians personally, even when this wasn't recommended. The meeting did go surprisingly well. Not much hostility from the Stellarians, and in the end, the device managed to put together 2 deals with them. The first deal wasn't as ideal for us, as it was a defensive pact against the Cult of Singularity and their allies. We don't know much about them, but I'd assume the device saw a good reason to join this pact. The second pact, on the other hand, is a bunch more interesting. The device granted investment and commercial rights to an Alarian company to compete with the Spriggan company. We shall see how this changes our industrial landscape. Lastly, the device mandated another 30,000 to be mobilized and sent to the meat grinder, that is the Venerian underworld. We haven't currently managed to make much progress in clearing out the criminals, but this new wave of recruits might be the difference. 2330. A 1, a 2, and a 3. Pawns step forward once, or twice, guarding the bigger pieces. These bigger pieces then take out the opposing pawns. Such is the way of life. Such is the way of war. It has been a good 10 years since we last invested more divisions into the Venerian battlefields. I don't believe any of the soldiers there today match the ones that left first. Fighting has been harsh. These criminals keep getting funding. No matter how many facilities we raid, we destroy or neutralize, they just keep fighting. There has to be a nation funding them. No single group of organized crime in a nation this poor can fund this sort of war. We have gathered up a list of a couple of subjects. No one can confirm any of the involvement, or if they are clear of any involvement, but we hope for answers in the near future. We have moved on to lesser planets of the Venerian Imperium, and we've gotten permission to use active orbital bombardment or large explosives if necessary. The Venerian elite won't mind if we do a bit of aggressive demolitions outside their precious capital system. 2337. Whoopsie. We finally gotten a good clue on who is funding these criminals. We've acquired this piece of information after we successfully raided a large criminal hideout that was seemingly used for smuggling weapons onto the planet. We found weapons. A lot of them. None of them were anything like the Venerians usually used. Nor did they feature any markings of a Venerian-made weapon. These weapons were being investigated as a low priority mission for years upon years, linked up to a breakthrough earlier this year actually. A ship carrying similar weapons was captured very near a hub for criminal activity. Inside the ship was a crew of Venerians, but the ship was filled with mask insignias and symbols. We finally had our lead, and we began our investigation. The masks are a hard nut to crack, but we hope to find some more evidence sooner rather than later. 2343. Encasement. 10 years ago, work started on the planet of Alusari in the Venihabitus system to recover the planet into its original state, a world encased in a massive pile of steel. When we first acquired the planet, it was in terrible condition. Most of its planet-covering cityscape had been left in ruin by whatever caused it to become abandoned. Now, the planet is back into the state it deserves to be in. A grey ball heading towards a new era in life. In the middle of the planet's central government plaza is a massive gold and emerald statue of a great leader, the Device, who themselves designed this piece of art. In accordance with this, the planet shall be the home of our greatest studies on life and the Device, hoping for it to propel us to the great beyond. 2347. The L Cluster.
So, what you're yapping is that the Skibidi R mask from the Northington decided to unlock some LS gates to the L cluster, and now there's some stupid ass shit ravaging the Cockturds lands. I'm finna do something about this. I know we're browsed to be the first trying to mock me by crime-maxing in the Venerian Cockpirium, but now also by opening the L gates. I'm gonna dead-ass give them an ultimatum, Sonish. This is can't fucking be. Ready up to drippy arm, literally. No more gooning.
The Device's words were taken, and once again the army and the navy would be set on the readiness mode. First on the agenda would be to wipe out any threats possessed by the invaders from the L cluster. So the fleet was sent to the Belavaras Maelstrom, with orders to only safeguard Kuorain space. This meant that upon arrival, the fleet would mostly just sit still, observing the movements of their opponents, as they were just moving around in Venerian territory. Eventually though, the Tempest did move into Kuorain territory, where they were quickly intercepted and neutralized. After this, the fleet's admiralty were feeling themselves, and ended through the Algate into the terminal egress, where, after fighting a seemingly never-ending horde of Tempest for a bit, it was decided that it wasn't worth dying for, a retreat was called. Further incursions by the Tempest were light at best, and this event was largely ignored by the wider public. 2366. Too far. Investigations on the mask's involvement in criminal activities in Venerian space have yielded results. The criminals have seemingly received funding and weaponry from the masks for over 100 years at this point. It explains their intensely fortified positions. Now, the singular mask has yet been captured, as they seemingly don't enjoy doing their work manually. In addition to this horrid appalling of criminal activities, the masks also occupied the Venerian system containing the Belvares Maelstrom and the Algate. The device is not at all happy, and has thus decided to send the mask an ultimatum, threatening military actions if the ultimatum isn't accepted. After the call to mobilize was sent about 20 years ago by now, the Kuorain armed forces were more than ready to wreak some havoc. The fleets would thus begin the journey to the demilitarized zone between the masks and the Kuorain. 2369 War of Shadows. After the ultimatum, nothing was heard from beyond the border. They did not seem amused. The device took this silence as vicious mockery. This would not do. A war was called, and the fleet was sprang into action. The fleet would depart from the Aurigo station with haste, heading into the northern frontier and in the demilitarized border region. Shortly after entering the space surrounding Hell's small black hole, the enemy fleet would be spotted in the Epsilon Eridani system, orbiting a star fortress. The fleet was very weak, so an offensive was called and the fleet would move into attack. While the fortress and the forces defending it did survive for quite some time, they were ultimately no match for the Kuorain navy. While this battle was victorious, a curious development had been observed. This didn't seem to be the entire mass navy. Soon after the fleet had been repaired, a distress signal would be received from back home. The masks had seemingly used some sort of advanced cloaking technology to evade the much stronger Kuorain force. Not wanting to sacrifice the vital shipyards at the Aurigo station, the fleet would bounce back towards Kantahame. By the time the fleet had returned, the space station was quite destroyed, and the opposing fleet had gone without a trace. This war could end up being quite difficult. 2375. To fight the shadow. How do you fight something you can't hit? Forget that. Something you can't even catch. This dastardly mass employs such rotten techniques that our mighty fleets, which outnumber the puny mass by a factor of more than 2, cannot even fire a singular shot at them. They managed to land an invasion army under one of our words. This doesn't worry anyone that much. It's quite empty, only really used for manufacturing and mines. While this feat wasn't that worrying on its own, the fact that they were able to sneak an entire army into our backyard was quite worrying. We must find a way to crack their cloaking, only if the Venerians were useful for anything. Varjot lipuvat avaruudessa kuin aaveet, näkymättömänä ja koskettamattomana. They have once again appeared over one of our worlds, though, unlike last time, they do not have an army anymore. We seem to have destroyed the invasion armies a while ago. While this is great on paper, the mass has seemingly swapped their strategy into a harsh aerial bombardment, courtesy of the ships in the orbit of the planet. Casualties from this are estimated to be in the hundreds of millions, if not billions. This war seems hardly winnable by traditional methods. 2378. Peace? The war has gone now. We've occupied half of the mass space, but this has led us to nothing. They seemingly care about their space almost as much as we do. The Venerians were ordered to advance the fleet, but the fleet is so pitiful it would not even make a dent against the mass fleet if they were to encounter one. They, at the very least, have managed to take back the Belvares Maelstrom. Hulluutta kuvastaa se, kun yrittää tehdä samaa epäonnistunutta asiaa kerta toisensa jälkeen.
This Kividiakunos. I need to talk to someone. Matti, get your cat here this instant. We need to end this kerfuffle this instant, or our entire industry will be venom taxed.
The device's wise words were heeded, and negotiations for an armistice with the masks were started. These negotiations would end up successful somehow, but the list of terms was short. The only thing that would change from the war start would be that the mask have to give up the Belver's Maelstrom to the Valerians. At least one of our war goals was achieved. 2382. Descent.
Ai täytyy jaksaa continue eteenpäin. If I don't, he kuolevat. Minusta must mag heidät, mutta kyllä, yes, the rotat, he failed to rikastua. Valmistelkaa mokkaus, fleet. Lähdemme soon. He tulevat, feel my voimani.
The minister, whom the device had called over, starts worrying. Half the words it spoke didn't make sense. It sounds like it's speaking another language. It did make out something. Read the fleet. War seems to be on the horizon once again. This time, the device doesn't seem like it will give up. The fleet was called up, and mobilization was started. Nobody other than the device knew who they were going to fight, but that didn't matter, as the device would personally join the armada this time. 2391. A beginning.
The talous is korjattu. Laivasto is ready and on the raja. Nyt ei mitään more left. Minun I will valloittaa those saatanan rotat before you voit repäyttää your silmäsi sotaan.
Usually, at this point, the device would end in a frenzy, moving around aimlessly, but this time, instead of the device moving, everything around it would start flinging like a storm had entered the room. After the device snapped out of his state, it boarded its capital ship and ordered the fleet to cross the now defunct Kuorain's brigand border. Orders were to destroy anything that moved on the other side until the fleet was to reach its final destination, near a strategic checkpoint, which the device had deemed good enough of an expansion for now. This would go fine up until the fleets reached a stronghold world, way too filled with defending armies for the honestly very measly Kuorain land force. More than that, the neighbors surrounding the Kuorain weren't quite that appreciative of this gambit the device had taken on, and had seemingly been preparing for war. As there wasn't much of a government to negotiate with on the other side, the device just annexed the occupying lands directly. 2395, and an end. It did not take long for the powers surrounding the Kuorain nation to begin their offensive. Something legendary would have to be done to succeed against this coalition of empires, synchronizing their movements like their lives depended on it. The fleet was notably strong, even on a galactic scale, but against 5 other navies, it would be just hopeless. The device still led the fleet personally, it was in the mindset that it alone could win against any fleet in the galaxy. Though this was, of course, nothing more than an illusion. As mighty as the device was made out to be, it did not possess great fighting strength. Opposing fleets were detected on all sides, and a decision was made. The fleets would have to be tackled one by one, otherwise they would just be able to overwhelm the relatively tiny Kuorain fleet with pure numbers. It was ultimately decided that the fight to determine the future of the Kuorain race would be found in the Pennosta system, just to the north of the Aurinko system. A smaller detachment from the map was currently occupying the system. Maybe the Kuorain fleet could catch them by surprise and eliminate them. The Kuorain fleet would depart from the Aurinko shipyard for the final time and head to the Pennosta system. Upon entering the system, the fleet would immediately open fire on their foes. If their foes weren't dealt with fast enough, the Kuorain would be in big trouble. The fight rages on, but the Kuorain aren't killing them fast enough, and disaster strikes. More fleets arrive into the system, and they aren't sporting friendly signatures. Orders were made to fight until the last man to defend the device. They must not lose its light to any other empire. One by one, the Kuorain ships would fall in front of the greatest force ever assembled in the galaxy.
Ei, saatana! Miksi Ai, en ole done mitään wrong. Ai autoin these people saavuttaa the potential. Ja näin I'm compensated siitä.
At the end, only one ship is left standing, though completely neutralized. Inside it, the only thing alive is the device, raging with a fury it has never felt before. Will this be its end, or is it destined for life in a prison for the rest of eternity? Prologue. The device. As opposing forces close in on the device's location in its capital ship, it starts panicking and spinning around aimlessly and tirelessly. The scene, the fall of nations, a rise of races, and the end of times. Yet this is still a new experience. Loss.
Stum, div, jalot. He, tunnelud, la, shit, sav, rof, gnuta. Minä vil voittaa, even jos it was viimeinen thing minä ever tein.
Opposing soldiers run into the room, and the device starts flinging around scraps of metal in the room. These attacks are mostly useless and only catch a couple of opponents before a couple of soldiers sneak next to the device, unnoticed, and put a box around the device. The device tries to struggle. The box wobbles around as it does. Nevertheless, it is hopeless. The box is somehow draining the device's energy, and it goes offline. The leader of the Kuorain civilization has been captured and sent on its way to be someone's fancy lamp once again. After turning off, no matter what its captors would try, it would not open up or speak again. It had once again reverted to the dormant state it had been in for millennia before. This is the state it was sold to the Kuorain in by traders millennia ago. Nobody knows how long the device would sleep for, or what it'd do after it wakes up again. Nor does anyone know if civilization still even exists by then. Another page is turned, and the device is forgotten once again, as just a quirk, another fad, and a passing memory of a maniac. Prologue. The Kuorain. After news of the device's capture reached the upper command of the Kuorain army and what few advisors the device liked to keep around, a slight panic set forth into the quite nice and cozy system that the Kuorain had built around them. Most of these figures were chosen due to their loyalty and by the device's will. Most of them were definitely nowhere near ready for their jobs, and even fewer could actually manage to do it. Without the device's guidance, that is. Especially after the staged bombing of the Hall of Parliament, the political apparatus was mostly destroyed by the device, who deemed it unnecessary. A good bunch of the higher-ups just packed up their loose belongings, boarded their personal vessels, and departed with utmost haste. They knew exactly what would happen when the general public would hear of what had happened. These fleeing figures would scatter all across the galaxy in the many different empires and completely detach themselves from anything and everything in the Kuorain space. Those who remained tried to set up a military-led government that would be in charge of keeping together a resemblance of order. It would not be long, though, until rumors of the device's capture would flame up. Now, this rumor was, of course, completely true, but the fact has been completely true, of course, but this was completely kept from the wider public. They were not happy, Normal workplace riots would turn into a violent protest that in turn turned into an attempt to overthrow the government. The first few attempts would fail. Each was responded to with a horrifying show of force from the government. Cities were completely leveled, people rounded up and executed, and had their properties seized completely. Kandahame's central government would be overrun by 2398, but the loss of life on just Kandahame had reached in hundreds of billions of Kuorain. Other colonies weren't faring any better, as their governments tried setting up similar military juntas to no success. The old governing structure would eventually rot away, and by 2401, Kuorain space could not be referred to as anything else than a lawless space where criminal gangs ruled the weaker and famines were commonplace. The once lively Kuorain species, which could before be counted in trillions, would now be reduced to what seemed to be hundreds, if not tens of billions. One Kuorain colony would be a notable exception. The colony system of Deneb was seized by the government not too long before current time, and was thus quite distant and different from the heartland. Thus it kept order and managed to build up a democracy of some kind. A first in Kuorain history. Only time will tell if this project stays afloat. The last Kuorain remnant in the galaxy would live on as a group without even a planet to call home. A small, about 20 ship remnant fleet from the Kuorain Navy that would survive the battle in Penosta. They would make their way into the government's research sector in the northwest, where they would plot their revenge against those who wronged the Kuorain race. This has been the end of the Kuorain audio logs, I guess. That's what I like to call them. Maybe you listened to all of it. Thank you. This was a really stupid project I took on. Maybe someone might have enjoyed it. I don't know. Thank you for listening to it though.